This is Say More with Carla Pesono. Today's guest is a writer for the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and NOLA.com, covering restaurants and food culture. His commentary series, Where Yeet, airs weekly on NPR affiliate WWNO, and he's a frequent contributor to WWL Radio in New Orleans. Also the author of 2 books, Louisiana Rambles and A Season of Night. Ian McNulty, welcome to Say More.
Great to be here. Thanks, Carla.
I'm so excited to sit down and talk with you. We see each other all the time at events over the last decade, but to actually sit down and really talk and say more, this is very exciting.
Oh, glad to be here.
Okay, so how long have you been writing for the paper now at NOLA.com?
Well, that's a saga in itself because it's had some different names, some different affiliations.
Yeah.
I started writing about food in New Orleans way back when, in about 2001. Didn't get a staff position on the paper until 2013, and that was with the New Orleans Advocate. Well, then the New Orleans Advocate bought the Times-Picayune, and so that became the Times-Picayune, New Orleans Advocate, NOLA.com, which is a mouthful, yes, but it's all our different channels.
Yeah, all our different channels.
So, on staff with the papers in one form or another since 2012, but in the game somehow or other since 2001.
Wow, that's such a long time. And you're from Rhode Island,
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Or as I tell people down here, the North Shore. It's just, 1,300 miles north of Mandeville. But when I got here, I heard from some people who said, oh, look, anyone north of I-10 is going to be considered a Yankee by some people, so just roll with it. So,
right?
Yeah, okay. But yes, a very different world up in New England, and Rhode Island is where I grew up. And came down here to a different world.
Yeah, completely different world. Why did you come? Did you come down here for work, or did you fall in love with the city and try to find a job initially?
Yeah, the latter. It was really wanderlust. I was a couple years out of college. I was back home, loving life. I love where I grew up. My family was there, all my friends. But I got this this wanderlust, this itch to go be Hemingway, run away to Europe, and then I realized I don't speak any European languages besides English, and I don't really have any money. And so maybe if I run away to New Orleans, it'll be easier to creep back with my tail between my legs when it all goes belly up. And really thought I came down here with almost no information about New Orleans beyond Tennessee Williams scripts and the usual cliches, and
Mardi
thought
Gras.
I'd heard of Mardi Gras.
But you never experienced it.
I heard they had a parade, the Mardi Gras parade. Most of my knowledge of Mardi Gras came from Paul's Boutique lyric from Beastie Boys album. But I came down fully expecting Carla to spend a year, just do a year, go back home, have great stories that I could drink off for all those cold winter nights back up in Rhode Island, that crazy year in New Orleans. But that crazy year in New Orleans turned out to be pretty great. And it turns out they do Mardi Gras every year. They do Jazz Fest every year. Every year summer comes and you think, I'm questioning my life, but then the fall returns again and everything is great. And I didn't want to get off the carousel. So I kept on going around and around. And before you know it, it's home.
Yeah. Was food always a big deal growing up? Did you always want to cover food?
No.
As a journalist?
New Orleans did it to me. It really was New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah. I started off, I grew up in a household of food lovers, but it wasn't like a gourmet era. Dining out wasn't a really big thing of what we did as a family up there. And, there was the
what's your ethnicity? What was your background? Was your mama cook? Was it a big...
Yeah, my mom was a very hardworking working mom with who would cook on the weekends, and we'd have, frozen lasagnas and chicken parm to get us through the week. She was a school teacher, worked late after school.
My mom was a school teacher too.
Yeah, right. And Dad, worked at a factory and was second shift kind of guy. So, on the weekends it would be home cooking. And the occasional outing to Dad's favorite pub for a burger, or the Italian restaurant down the street. But really, I didn't grow up in this foodie lifestyle, or this the people that I interview, the chefs, the restaurant people, they live in New Orleans. They grew up in Louisiana, and this milieu of food culture is a big part of it. It really was more of a discovery for me. But when I came to New Orleans, I one of the very few things I knew about it was the food was supposed to be good. Everyone talks about the food.
Right.
If you know nothing else about New Orleans, you know something about Mardi Gras, and the food's really good.
Yeah, that's it.
And when I arrived, I had a few years under my belt as a reporter, not covering food whatsoever. General assignment reporter for a small town newspaper back home. And then here, I got a job right off the bat at the Business Weekly, New Orleans City Business, covering such riveting topics as banking and insurance. But on the side, I was exploring my new home. And one of the ways I did that was by devouring everything I could of food coverage. I wanted to see, okay, well, what's good? Where do I go? So every little column, every review that came out in the Times-Picayune, I devoured it. And tried to explore these places as best I could budget and manage. And actually, I had a pretty lousy initial food experience in New Orleans. I remember I kind of just fell off the turnip wagon here and started, okay, well, where's food? Good food must be everywhere. And walking down blazing hot St. Charles Avenue one of the first days I was in town, I saw a sidewalk sign saying Jambalaya this way. I'm like, oh, this must be the place, Jambalaya. I've heard of that. It's in the Hank Williams song and everything. Well, I go in and this was a terrible plate of jambalaya. Even my unseasoned palate back then could tell you that. It was dry. It was red.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I fell for it. It was a tourist trap and I fell right into it. And that was sort of like a distilling moment of like, no, I'm going to find where the good food is. There must be good food here if I just look a little harder. So again, following everything that everybody was writing about food at the time, anything that I could get, get my Zagat guide to restaurants, follow the late great Tom Fitzmaurice, listen to his radio show, just trying to learn, almost like you're trying to get to know a new subject matter,
right?
Really cramming, and then, started discovering like these really great food experiences. And this was like, again, strictly recreational. But I talked about it enough that my friends knew I was really into it. And one of them worked for Offbeat Magazine, which is the local music monthly, and said, hey, our food columnist is leaving and they're going to be looking for someone else. You should apply. I'm like, I'll throw my hat into the ring. I'm very lucky to get that. And before you know it, once a month, I was writing a column about restaurants around New Orleans. And this is 2001. This is an analog era. And it was a pretty good training ground because it was, it was a monthly thing. It wasn't hugely demanding. It was just a little side gig.
Right.
It was a really good education in it. And I picked up a gig writing a guidebook. Again, like picture a Zagat guide from the old days, the long, narrow thing that's supposed to fit in your glove compartment.
Oh, yeah.
It was a different company that was doing something similar on really good value restaurants and bars. It was called Hungry, Thirsty New Orleans. And so I got commissioned to edit this and gather a bunch of other people. So it was sort of like crowdsourcing before crowdsourcing.
Yeah,
it was like, get a bunch of your friends, recruit them. We're going to pay them nothing. We're going to pay you next to nothing. And then go out to restaurants on your own dime and write up these little micro reviews. And we're going to put it in a published book and people are going to buy it.
Yeah.
That was the deal back then. And so literally opened the phone book, which was Google of its time, and found restaurants and started looking at all these restaurants and making lists of them and then driving around town and trying to find ones that would fit in the criteria of being really good bargains. And that was, that was a fast forward education in it, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't imagine like going back to, that's how you had to find the places.
Well, that and talking to people. I mean,
that's the number one.
Yes, of course.
And
that's
that still
the thing.
is.
Yeah. Taxi drivers, people at work. And here's the thing. When I moved here, back in 99, and before I was starting to write about food, I didn't know anybody. I had one acquaintance from back home who was a bartender in Bourbon Street. He became a great friend over time, but just getting here, I knew nobody. And so, I want to meet people. I want to talk people up. I quickly learned that no matter where I was or who I was talking to, whether it was the dude having a Abita next to me at the balcony bar or the senior vice president of lending for Capital One that I was interviewing for work, that if I started with food, their eyes lit up.
Yep.
The tips start flowing. Oh, you
gotta go here.
Yeah, you don't have a favorite roast beef po' boy yet? There were like people recruiting you to root for their favorite team.
Yes.
Right?
It's oh no, you gotta go here. You gotta go here. Yeah.
So I was a sponge and just soaking it up. And before you know it, it became less of a sideline, more of a compulsion. And the thing that really did it, though, for becoming a food writer and not just somebody who wrote about food on the side, was Hurricane Katrina. So Hurricane Katrina was in, the levees break, and everything is an open question, including which publications are going to come back, who can come back after everyone was evacuated.
Yeah.
We just finished the 20th anniversary of Katrina. Thank goodness that's behind us.
Right.
Don't want to go back to that. But one of the things I found surprising to myself was how, kind of a whole generation of people understand Katrina as a hurricane that came through and did a lot of damage. But what they kind of missed was that the aftermath of it, because the city was so badly flooded for so very long, everyone had to leave. And the city was almost empty, really. And this incredible phenomenon of an American city being emptied of its people almost completely, and then having people trickle back in, often individually, often at horrible circumstances. But all those were individual decisions that people had to make on their own terms of when and how and if they even could come back. And so, long way of saying, there were opportunities if you were back in town. And I happened to be back in town very early after after the storm and the flood drained away, and was here when Gambit Weekly, the alt weekly publication, started publication again in October 2005, mere weeks after Katrina. And they were looking for a food writer, and I was actually here. And so got the nod for that. So instead of doing a monthly thing for a music magazine, I was doing a weekly column for Gambit.
So it was almost like a mixed blessing.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't want to wish it on anybody, and you really wouldn't want to go through it again. But there were definitely opportunities and things that happened as a result. And I mean, the post-Katrina experience was searing. I mean, it was a defining thing in my life and for a lot of people who were here at the time, I think, because it was just such an extreme change and difference, and everything was so intense. Your feelings, your fidelity for home, the struggle, everything was difficult. Everything was so hard and scary and uncertain. But if you were here, it was also this feeling of, this is our city. We're coming back. We're building it back. We're going to fight against the odds. We're going to fight against all the people who say New Orleans shouldn't even exist anymore. And we're going to do our bit and do it. Right. That was the narrative at the time. That was very much part of the national narrative at the time. And to bring it back to food, because everything always comes back to food, as a food writer, I mean, I wasn't out there reviewing restaurants in the weeks and months after Hurricane Katrina. I was writing a weekly column about how and if they were possibly coming back.
Yeah, especially the staples.
Yeah. And but every aspect of it, where are the oyster shuckers? Who are predominantly Black men? Are they ever going to be able to come back and resume this part of the food culture? What's the fate of our Creole Soul restaurants? The worst flooded neighborhoods, Mid-City, Gentilly, Lakeview, will the restaurants ever come back? We knew the big ones would, or would they? You never know. Everything was up in the air.
Yeah.
And so week by week, it was me covering this. It was also me getting a crash course, just a finishing school lesson in what food and restaurants mean to New Orleans people. Much more than, this is the hot new place, or this chef is famous, or this place looks cute. It was like this just heart on their sleeve, like family connection to these restaurants that they've been going to for generations. And they cared desperately about when they would come back, if they could come back, how the chef was doing. Was the chef's mama okay? I mean, these are the kind of questions that you would field as a writer back then. And, just tracking people down, talking to them about their own plans, hearing the sacrifices that restaurant people were making in order to reopen, even though it wasn't a financially great decision or not even a pragmatic one. Like this, there's no grocery store for miles around that's open, and yet we're going to have fine dining back. And it just, it was, as a food writer, it was a time when I really learned what the restaurant and food culture meant to people in New Orleans, and to see them, the operators, the chefs, but also the patrons, rebuilding it all, actually going restaurant by restaurant, night by night, bringing back the food culture and showing the world along the way that New Orleans was coming back. Because like I said, when I moved down here and knew nothing else, I knew Mardi Gras and I knew food. Well, Mardi Gras came back and the restaurants came back.
So we good.
Long before schools, libraries, many churches.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of the basics.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. I mean, just a quick vignette. This was in the fall of 2005. You know, I'm living back in my house in Mid-City. I don't have electricity. Wouldn't have it for months. Don't have hot water. Wouldn't have it for months. But I had a roof over my head and I had a job still. And right away, I was way better than most of the people in New Orleans. And I learned that Ralph's in the Park, the great Ralph Brennan restaurant by City Park, was reopening because it was on a ridge that most of us didn't know was there before, a higher ridge of land, so it didn't flood like the rest of the neighborhood. So the rest of the neighborhood was absolutely ruined. Ralph's in the Park was able to reopen relatively quickly.
With generators and stuff?
Yeah, they got the power back. It was really like restaurant by restaurant, block by block, it could come back. And some areas were utterly devastated and would take a long time to come back. But others, just a block away, were in much better shape. We think it's a totally flat city. It's a rolling city.
Yeah,
it's a lot of ridges and ditches and, you know. So here I am. I just had to walk because, you know, I'm just going to walk through my destroyed neighborhood along Bayou St. John on the way to dinner. Decided to pull out a dinner jacket for it. Ralph's in the Park is a really nice upscale Creole restaurant. And I'm walking through and I hear the rumble of this dually truck pull up behind me. And it's this guy with a sticker on the side of the truck for some church relief group in from Texas. And the window comes down and says, "Brother, do you need a hot meal?" And I said, "My friend, thank you, but I'm actually on my way to have shrimp remoulade and a steak at an expensive restaurant, but thank you very much for being here." I mean, that was the duality of what New Orleans was like in those months after Katrina. And so
it's gotta be surreal.
It was such a education for me of what these restaurants meant and what it took to bring them back and how much of it flows through community and how much of New Orleans community actually does connect through its food, and restaurants being a vital expression of that.
Yeah. It's like obviously I wasn't here during Katrina, before Katrina. I didn't get down here till 2015. So, but like being a journalist and then like realizing the food scene and the culture here in the community, it's like, I love hearing you talk about this because I'm almost like envious that you got to experience that, even though that is so devastating, but it's just seeing the way the community rebuilt itself. Because me coming down here in 2015 and noticing the way community is and the food culture, that's what made me fall in love with it and know that I wanted to stay here for the long haul and cover the food scene and the community, because there's nothing like it until you meet the people and go into those restaurants and meet the owners and the chefs. And it's like, there's just nothing more beautiful. Well,
I'd say New Orleans is a restaurant town, a hospitality town, in the way that, New York is a financial town, that Hollywood, California, LA, Hollywood is a film production town. It's what we do. And it's wonderful because it's an open door. Like what we do here is an open door to other people who visit and can experience our restaurants and our food and our people just by simply going out for lunch or dinner. And, the Katrina experience, wouldn't wish it on anyone, wouldn't want to repeat it ever.
Right.
But we've had tastes of some of that hard on the sleeve. We're going to do this together in New Orleans in the years since, certainly after some of the lesser hurricanes that had a huge impact on the city. And of course, it's a food story immediately. People want to know what restaurants are back, which ones, did the historic sign make it through okay? Are the people okay? And
unlimited stories.
Yeah. Well, and then the COVID experience, of course, was when we saw people, the restaurants all had to change on a dime. And then it was the people, their customers, their clientele, who kept them in it. And it was inspiring to see people like not just going out of their way, but making it their purpose to help support this restaurant so that they could make it through to the other side. And it worked for a great many of them. It's an incredible story.
Yeah. So talking about Katrina and then to COVID, those are two major things that happened in our city. What What is the biggest thing you've seen in the switch of just the culinary scene because of those two major things, and just over the years in general? What is the biggest thing you've seen?
Without a doubt, the diversity of flavors and concepts and types of restaurants. In the era that was pre-Katrina, it was true of New Orleans all over.
It was just New Orleans.
It was, and if you didn't like what New Orleans was in those years before Katrina, you should just leave, because it was never going to change. And incidentally, a great number of people did, including a lot of New Orleans natives who said, I need opportunity, or need something else somewhere else. And they left in droves to Atlanta and Houston and other places. And the city was wonderful, but stagnant. There was a romance to it of like, things never change here. It's always the same. But there was a downside of that, and including on the front of culinary creativity. And the post-Katrina experience was a line in the sand moment for a lot of things in New Orleans. You could say through education, through politics, through a lot of different reforms, the texture of neighborhoods. But in the food world, it's definitely been a then and now expansion of the types of restaurants we have in New Orleans, the types of ideas that people bring here, the things that can thrive here. In double-edged sword kind of ways too, because before in the old days it was, gosh, could we possibly get one New York pizza here? Just one place with a good style New York pizza. Now there's take your pick, right?
I know we have so many now.
Yeah, could we have the foods of these other lands? Well, now we're teaming with it, but we don't have as many places that are serving righteous gumbo, really good red beans, back of the stove, mama cooking. Yeah. And so there are new places coming along like that, and which I'm very happy to see, and I embrace them. Because I think we need to, if nothing else, we have to keep the New Orleans and New Orleans food. That's the basis for everything.
Of course.
But I do cheer the expansion of the idea of what New Orleans food can be, and also the curiosity for other types of food that have nothing to do with New Orleans, except the fact that they're delicious and they're here and we crave them and we want them.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of reasons for that. One is New Orleans people left. Everybody had to leave. They had to land somewhere, some for months, some for years. They got exposed to different things. They saw what was hip and happening in other cities, what was deeply traditional in other cities. And when they came back, they thought, I think something like that could work here. No one else is doing a really great Italian sub. No one else is doing Ethiopian food. Let's do that here.
Yeah.
Another part of the equation is a lot of people came here after Katrina because the story of rebuilding was very compelling. So a whole generation of people came down, maybe for Teach for America or to volunteer or just to be part of whatever opportunities were happening here. They came from somewhere else. They settled. They made it their home. They became New Orleanians.
Yeah.
And they come in with a different perspective and different cravings and different knowledge and different family traditions. And many of those can translate into the restaurant world.
Yeah.
And so there was a great refresh, really, of what was possible.
And then especially after COVID, the pop-ups, like these cooks, not chefs,
Right.
are like, hey, I really want to try this out. Let me go to this one neighborhood bar and start making my food. And then those things were blowing up. And then they eventually get a brick and mortar, or maybe they had a food truck and then eventually got a brick and mortar. So you're getting all these different cool viral type foods with the help of course, of social media.
Sure.
When people start talking about it, and then there's that hype. Oh, we're only cooking it this night. Right?
Yeah, the pop-ups are another great phenomenon that's changed the food scene here. And, there's always been some food trucks. There's always been a bit of street food, but it follows seasonal things. Like it would follow the parade schedule, during Mardi Gras, a lot of good street food.
That was more like an Austin thing.
Right. That it found a home here. And, the great institution of the New Orleans neighborhood bar has proved a very fertile ground for these pop-ups, which are like the garage bands for chefs and restaurants. And, they can try out an idea, gain a following, and suddenly it's like pop-up goes permanent. Woof, the crowds are already there. I think it's an amazing way to test, but I'm sure extremely challenging way to test run a restaurant concept where, the other model is you get some backers, you get a lot of money behind you, you roll the dice, and you see if people show up when you open.
Yeah.
Isn't it better to have built an audience before you even get to that point?
I know. I think it's genius. I was even thinking that, like, oh, maybe I'm going to test something and like just do a pop-up if I ever want to. I don't know if I'll ever open up a restaurant. That sounds scary. It's funny. We cover the restaurant. Would you ever open up a restaurant?
I never say never, but
I know I never say never, but like it sounds scary.
Knowing what goes into it and learning more and more every day about the challenges that they face and what they're trying to navigate, it's definitely a passion project. It's something that people go into because they feel drawn to it and compelled to do it.
And it really is your full-time life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
then
morning
some.
and night. And then some.
It's a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle. Okay, so initially, and it sounds like this wasn't really the case because you also like got into then eventually years later Katrina hit, but was it tough being an outsider? You're from the Northeast, people kind of are like, oh, you're not from here, you don't know anything, of writing about the food down here. Was there ever a time where people didn't take you seriously?
The time is still now, absolutely.
Me too.
Yeah, that time is still now. It was funny, I was just at a friend's birthday last night, and these two ladies who were my mom's age, they came up and they said, we just want to let you know, we've been following you and we weren't sure. We used to follow Richard Collin, who was the great underground gourmet of a generation ago, starting in the late 60s and 70s, put together some of the first restaurant guides, which I still have and look back to for reference. Some of his reviews still hold up 50 years later. And the two ladies said, okay. And then we follow Tom Fitzmaurice, and both of those guys were from here, and you're not from here, so we weren't really sure if we could trust what you were saying. But, the thing is, I came to this naturally. I came to love food in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like, New Orleans made me a foodie. And I trained. I took the palate on the road.
I did the same thing.
And I pay attention to what New Orleans people who know this from their own home traditions, what they responded to, what they liked, what resonated with them, and what didn't. And you pay attention to that, and you learn what this is supposed to be. And I'm a little late to the game. I didn't grow up with a gumbo spoon in my mouth, but you watch what the people around you, the people who are of the culture, are into, and then you become part of that too.
I know. I think of just being a natural, like me and you were just naturally curious.
Mm-hmm.
So like you hit the ground running, like, wait, this is exciting. Let me check out this place. Oh, this person just told me about this. I do the same thing. And I think that's what makes it exciting and then I guess a expert, right?
Yeah.
So to speak. And you got to respect those people that are doing the grunt work.
Well, the thing about doing this for a living is you have an assignment and you have a deadline. And, that's never changed in all the years I've been doing this. And so, if you love New Orleans food, it's what you do for your leisure. It's what you do to connect with people, to go out, you enjoy it. You can fall into a circuit of the places you go to, and that's what you know. But
yeah,
that's not going to work if your job, the gig, is to go out and find great new places or revisit old places and show these things to people who, the thing about this town is restaurants that have been around for 30 or 40 years can still be brand new to the person who's going there for the first time.
Absolutely.
And, I see this in our coverage. I mean, there's a high interest of our readers in new places and what's coming next. Equally high in places that have been around forever. If I read a story, its headline is basically restaurant the same as always, chef doing nothing different, it's all great. That's a huge story. People will respond to that. They want to see that, right? The flip side of, this innovative cuisine or this whole new thing. You've never seen anything like this.
Or if it's beautiful or.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the most, just the people respond to stories about New Orleans food because they love it and they love the people behind it. And they want to know about a place that endures and doesn't change just as much as they want to know about the hot new thing.
Yeah. I think there's just so many, it's funny for me down here, it's like the pop-ups and the hole in the walls sometimes have the better food. But when people are visiting, they're like, where could I go eat? I want Creole, or I want, they're always wanting Louisiana food is how they say it. But it's like, but what type of Louisiana food, right? And a lot of the places I think of are just like kind of hole in the walls, or maybe they're only open for lunch, or they close around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to sit down. They want a nice atmosphere. And it's so funny how how all over the place our restaurant atmosphere is.
Oh,
Can you
sure.
talk a little bit on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's really part of that hospitality culture that we have. I mean, some restaurants you feel like you're in somebody's house. You know, you just walked in, you're taking a seat in the kitchen. Some restaurants feel like you're going to the opera. You know, they're grand, and others, you know, are stylish. It's about how you want to feel. Like how does the restaurant make you feel is a huge part of the appeal of these places. And sometimes you want to feel, like you are, you know, dropping into someone's home for a meal. Sometimes you want to feel pampered. Sometimes you want to feel special. Sometimes, you know, it's the set and the setting and the people that you're with. I think in New Orleans, we're lucky because of the built environment is, think about it. It's many of our restaurants are tucked into our neighborhoods because of the historic layout of our neighborhoods. In the old days, there was a corner store on almost every corner.
Right.
And as things changed and grocery stores got bigger, that became the thing. The corner stores went away, but many of them turned into bars or restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at like a lot of these restaurants that are on corners in New Orleans, they were once maybe an Italian grocery, or they started out as a bar room.
Yeah, or a bakery. Or
Right. Yeah, Mandina's restaurant's a great example of that in Mid-City. So you have that. So you have restaurants that are bringing you into your neighborhood. You're not, often you go to other cities and the hot new restaurant is downtown and in the business district only, or they're out on corporate cul-de-sacs and in new developments. But here you're coming into New Orleans neighborhoods. You're parking in front of people's front porches and you're walking into these restaurants. That's one part of it. The other is the French Quarter. Which, I mean, these are grand Creole townhouses of the 1800s that have been converted into restaurants. And you get a chance to walk into these places that are like museums, basically.
Stunning.
Yeah. And for the cost of a dinner or a lunch or just a drink, you get to walk in and be in these places. You think of the grand dames of French Creole dining. I mean, going to Arnaud's, going to Antoine's. I mean, the built environment that you're taking part in is part of the whole experience in a way it's grand. And it's, it's like I say, it's like going to the opera sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like you want to dress for the occasion. But all across the city, we have small spaces too that are just as intimate as can be and are really just this mom and pop expression of the food.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's what makes it so special here. It's just so fun. Like you said, you go into a neighborhood, you're like, I didn't even know that existed. It's just like tucked away in between homes. Mm-hmm. You could get food, or maybe it's a bar, or maybe it's just so great. So you seem to be the first to know anything in the restaurant industry here. Whenever there's a closing, an opening, you are the first. You're if you're on social media too, you could see that post right away and you're like, okay, Ian knows what is happening right now. Now, are they reaching out to you, or are just because your longevity here, are they reaching out and you know exactly what's happening in the scene and what's about to be opening? Like, how does that work? I think everyone are noticing that.
All of the above. I mean,
it's everything.
I've been in the game for a while. You know people. People who started out as sous chefs, become chefs de cuisine, then open up their own restaurants, and I've been covering them through their whole career.
And they're like, hey,
you develop a network of people who, frankly, trust you to tell the story right.
Absolutely.
Get the details right. To be there when places open and they need support, but also I hate to compare it to this, but it's almost like write the right obituary when these places have to close.
I know.
It's an inevitable part of the life cycle of restaurants, even in New Orleans, where so many of them have this amazing longevity. But restaurants open, they do well. Sometimes it's time for the next thing, where things happen. And I mean, in the restaurant world, especially in New Orleans, very many of them are family restaurants, and anything that can happen in a family can affect that family restaurant, including divorces, death, the march of time. I mean, these are all things that play out through our rrestaurants because they are run by families and individuals by and large, not by corporate brands. And so that's a major consideration of it. Is like you've context for the scene. You know people, you know where things fit in the history of New Orleans dining or in the progression of it, and you know what's significant and what could be game changing or what is what's meaningful for what it represents.
Right.
And so that's what I try to present to people.
How many articles do you have to write a week?
Or
a month.
We still have a print newspaper that we are extremely grateful for. All of our print readers, and there is nothing like those stories.
It's true. That hit in print. Hold in the paper.
I hear from people all the time. They want that. Where do I get that paper? It's going to be in the print paper. That's
totally.
Cool. And so the print product has its own parameters. It has its own deadlines and cycles and certain pages that we want filled. And there's a whole section on Wednesday in the Times-Picayune that's devoted to dining, to restaurants, and I mainly field that with some of my colleagues also. There's a Sunday column that runs in the print paper for me about dining and restaurants and food. So if you roll those together, we're talking in a good week 4, sometimes 5 stories. If I'm doing something bigger, I might devote a little more time to that, and sometimes my colleagues will step in. Yeah, I mean, it can be, it varies. I mean, sometimes when things are really popping and snapping. I know that's what I'm saying.
And then on top of going to events and showing up to certain things and then eating all the food.
Well, it is a lifestyle job, like I said.
It is a lifestyle job. I get it.
Can't count hours in this thing. It's, at the end of the day, a lot of what I do, what would be the research in another field, going out to the places and experiencing them and seeing them, it's very pleasurable and it's very social fun. And it's tied in with my social life and my the things that I do for pleasure. It intersects very often with what I'm doing for work, not exclusively. Yeah. But it's at the end of the day, you have to meet deadline. People say, oh, you get to eat and write about it for a living. I'm like, well, I get to meet deadline for a living because if I don't do that, I don't have a job and nothing gets produced. So, it still has to come back to the good old, have an experience and then be able to describe it to somebody in a timely fashion and, produce some photos on it.
I know people are always like, you're having so much fun all the time. Like, I'm like, yeah, I definitely have made it my lifestyle, my work, but it's a lot of work. What goes on behind the scenes? You still have deadlines. Well,
the worst thing about being a food writer in this town is you've lost your God-given right as an American to complain about your job.
That's true.
Nobody wants to hear it.
No one wants to hear it, yeah.
But I work in a newsroom full of very hardworking, diligent journalists who are not covering fun things like bakeries and news and cocktails, but they're doing the really hard and important work of covering our city, whether it's the politics, the crime, the insurance crisis, the environment, the sports. It's all part of it. And it gets probably an outsized amount of attention. Food gets an outsized amount of attention in our outlets because it's New Orleans and it's a huge
fun.
Part of the culture.
It's happy.
Yeah. But if that gets people over to our site, gets them to subscribe, gets them to get that paper delivered to their house every day, and supports the work of my colleagues who are doing the hard news, then that's worth another trip back to the restaurant.
Yeah, I know. I think that's the biggest toll is keeping yourself healthy doing this job. How's it been for you?
Oh yes, definitely. Your livelihood is tied to going to these places that are often decadent. Yeah. And I let it get out of hand a few years back. But I made a sort of a pledge to myself as I got into doing this like seriously for a living, like way back when. If I'm gonna make most of my living at the table, there has to be something on the other side. So I played a lot of sports for a while, and that kind of I was training constantly. So that was the balance there. I got an injury. I wasn't doing that anymore. Things were catching up. Had to come to Jesus with my doctor. The blood work doesn't lie. And at the time, there was somebody really important in my life who was contending with some serious health issues that nothing could be done about, and wasn't her fault. And I decided, well, if I'm facing a health consequence here that I have 100% control over, I'm going to do that. That was sort of a catalyst. And I decided I had to right the ship again. So it's the simple equation of just eat less and exercise more, and try to find have the water meet.
Whenever we're not at a restaurant or
Yes.
at an event, you got to eat clean.
Exactly. Oh yes. When I'm not on, I'm off, and I still eat, but it's very Spartan. Yeah. One of my home hacks is like if it's a lunch that I'm off or dinner, it's it's broccoli and carrots and peppers thrown in the convection oven, roasted up, and doused with hot sauce so they taste like something besides dirt.
Same. Or like Greek yogurt and smoothies. Yeah. Okay, so after doing this for so long and seeing like the shift in journalism over the years, how do you feel about the shift with social media, food influencers now also, doing their reviews and whatnot?
Well, there's a lot out there, isn't there?
There's a lot.
Yeah. It's, people used to ask me, how do I get to be you? How do I get to be a food writer? How do I get to be a food writer? And I would say, well, I didn't really have a course. It wasn't like a natural progression as I described earlier. I didn't have a blueprint for this. But, back in the day, I would say, I guess start a blog, and then you can kind of cut your teeth and practice and see, you can show things to an editor that, and that seems so outdated now, right? Mm-hmm. The tech has enabled a lot. The quality of the phones, being able to go to a restaurant and use the phone that you use to text your friends and call your mom and produce basically a short movie about your meal has completely changed the scene and made Look, people say, "Are you a food critic?" Isn't everybody? Of course, everybody is, and people have had different ways to share that and communicate that. If we're going back to the old days of chat rooms, there was always a lively discussion of restaurants going on there. Fast forward to then blogs, and then the consumer review sites, which are mostly useful for comedic relief. If you really want to know how people feel about the swiftness of their iced tea being refilled, go check out a Yelp review. You're going to get all the good information.
Gosh, Yelp. Oh.
But I will say, I think it is a confusing time for food aficionados, for food lovers, because there are so many perspectives coming at you from constantly. As every time you open your phone, it's a little overwhelming, right? And so what is someone's hot take? What is somebody's informed opinion? And what is purely marketing? It can be hard to discern on social media.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so fascinating that someone could be so great at their marketing game and pop off viral videos, and they're constantly, selling their food and getting long lines. But is it technically, quote unquote, the best or top in that city? And I just think it's so fascinating, like what people can do with marketing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it goes back to a very old fashioned expression in journalism: consider the source. Right. Yeah. Or if we're talking about food, maybe consider the sauce. But consider the source. Like, who's telling you it? What's the person's background? And, it could be great. This influencer has 8 gazillion followers, and they come into town and they travel around. All they do is they drop into a town and they tell you, this is the best gumbo. This is the #1 best gumbo. Really? Have you tried a lot of them?
I know
this is the first one.
I know that's the most frustrating ththing. Like, you can't say that. Just be like, oh, someone told me this. This is really good.
Right.
Like, you can't say that.
Yeah, but the numbers don't lie. People follow what appeals to them.
Totally.
So, I think there's, the term atomized comes up a lot now. People's atomized attention, right? There's so many different channels now. There's so much to possibly consider, to consume, to watch, to read, to learn about. My course is you find people whose voice you trust, and hopefully they don't steer you wrong too often. That's why I tell people.
Well, and the proof's in the pudding. Like, if people are really talking bad or like, oh no, that was terrible, then they're like, okay, well, clearly they don't know what they're talking about, right? Consider the source or whatever.
Well, the thing is, in New Orleans, we have our own food culture here. Nobody understands New Orleans food like New Orleans people.
Exactly.
It's one of the things that I stress to newcomers or to people visiting when I do talks. when you're eating in New Orleans, dining around New Orleans, it's like you're in a different country with its own food. The food in New Orleans is as different from anywhere else in America as the food of Tuscany is in Italy, or the food of Catalonia is in Spain. It is truly a regional cuisine in a way that we have rarely in other places in the U.S. anyway. It's a very distinctive, almost its own ethnic national cuisine.
It really is.
And
you're not going to get it anywhere else.
Correct. And it's because, try to get a po' boy somewhere very far away from 504. It's not that easy.
It's the ingredients, yeah.
Right. And it's the people. It's the people who understand what this is. That understand how it's supposed to taste, how these restaurants are supposed to be, the hospitality that goes along with it. That feeling that you get from the people who do put their heart and souls into these restaurants. I mean, these are things that can be hard to convey in a 30-second social media reel, but are things that people feel and can connect to and relate to. I try to bring that into my work a bit. And I know that people care about it because that's what they talk to me about and what they talk to each other about constantly. I mean, this city, all we're doing is talking about food, right?
That's it.
I mean, if the Saints aren't doing particularly well, all we're talking about is food
and events.
And it's a never ending conversation, and it brings in everybody. And that's the thing I love about the food scene in New Orleans. Some cities you go to, it's clearly like, oh, these restaurants are there for the hip young kids. These restaurants here, oh, these are for the old fogies, right? Well, in New Orleans, it's like our culture writ large. It's everybody. I mean, it's the same way that we go into Mardi Gras together. It can be the grandkids and the grandparents watching the same parade, partying the same way. It's the same with our food culture, with our restaurants. It spans all the different generations because it's ours. It's New Orleans.
It is.
And it's not invented or created. It's cultivated by the people in the community and kept alive and relevant. And I think that at the end of the day, that New Orleans food culture that's the underlying thing. People who grew up with this, or people like me who learned about it gratefully, it sets this palette of this expectation of good food, of flavors that are complex and developed and deep and rich. And that's the New Orleans palate. And then that palate is primed and curious for other things that are really delicious that have nothing to do with New Orleans food per se, but are being served in New Orleans. And so that's how the rich diversity of food in New Orleans becomes part of the New Orleans food story. It doesn't have to start with a roux, but if it starts with good flavor and it's authentic and satisfying, New Orleans people respond to that. They have a very curious palate. That's why we have such great restaurants that are so wildly diverse from the New Orleans scene can find a home here.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things when I came down here. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit too much salt sometimes. I'm like, can we lower the sodium? But then there's sometimes when it's like, no, this flavor is actually balanced. We don't need all the salt.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we need to stop being so heavy on the salt.
Consider the humble celery stalk, right? On its own, what is this? Who celebrates the celery stalk? But it's part of the Trinity. So you put that with onions and bell peppers. You have the Trinity. That's the basis for flavor. Your gumbo would not taste the same without that celery. And that's something that the home cooks know and that have passed on through families. And that's like one of these underlying basis of good Creole flavor. And it's a progression. What I've learned from chefs and home cooks is like, it's not just a combination of ingredients and you chuck in some salt at the end. It's a layering. It's a progression. It's the great chefs from the Creole tradition have taught each other, and that I've learned from watching them is, it's this building flavor. And that's why, it's so eye-opening when people who grow up with, sort of blander kind of everyday food, or just, it's delicious because we threw a lot of cheese at it, or, it's kind of crunchy, so it appeals.
Or butter.
When they come, exactly. They come butter and cheese together at last.
Yeah.
When they come down here and actually have our soulful Creole cooking, it's really eye-opening. Yeah. It was for me.
That's what it is. It's that soul, like the Caribbean. Like I just went to a Caribbean night over at Paradigm Gardens, and like Caribbean flavor is just like when you go to the Caribbean, go to Jamaica, I just went to Turks and got some island food. And then you come here, you're like, we are the northernmost Caribbean city, and that's what you taste in our flavor. It's all that build of flavor, and it just feels like that home cooking. Even though you've never had this for home cooking, if you feel the soul and the love in the food.
Yeah, well, what makes food culture is place, people, history. Right? Yeah. And everywhere has that in some combination, but no one has it quite the same way as New Orleans, because those three things played out differently here.
Absolutely.
And we have Caribbean food has a lot to say to the New Orleans Creole situation. it's African, it's Caribbean, it's European, it's also Deep South because we're here. And it's all those things together distinctly sometimes, but in concert very often. And like, yeah, people from the Caribbean, they come here, they feel a connection. Talk to Nina Compton about that. This feels like the kind of place where I grew up. You talk to a friend of mine from Spain. He walks around the streets saying, this is the French Quarter. This is exactly like Spain back home.
It's literally Havana. If anyone's been to Havana, you walk down our French Quarter and you feel like you're in Havana. It's wild. So you are, when you're writing, you're pretty much being objective, right? Unbiased with your writing.
I hope so.
Which you should be, right? As a journalist. Has you ever run into times where you're writing about something or like, because you never want to give anything negative or like well, you could do uber positive, but like, have you ever, does this happen a lot where you're writing and you're like, oh, I have to be really careful how I say it?
Well, I try to put great care into what I write. I'm asking people for their time by reading my work, by even looking at me in the blizzard of content on social media. So I want to respect that time by giving you something worthwhile. So I do put a lot of effort into telling a story, for every story. And I say this to other journalists too. It's when you're struggling to find your angle. It's like, you always have an opportunity in this field to learn something and then share it with other people. That's what I'm doing when I go to restaurants that are new to me or that I'm exploring again for the first time in too long. And so, yeah, you want to offer something that's worthwhile. And my writing tends to be very positive because I find places that I like, that I think my readers and followers will like, that I think will resonate with them, that has something to say to them. And I want to uplift that. I don't really want to spend all the bandwidth and the time to put together a story, to arrange photos, to carve out space in the newspaper to say, don't go here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's.
And plus it's just horrible. I don't know why people think like being negative is like, oh, you're so real because you're negative. It's like, no, there's
well, my
need to be.
My role and my style has changed through the years with different publications and just the evolution of my own voice. And, in the early days, if you didn't say something negative about a restaurant or find something to hit them with, you weren't doing your job. And truly, that was what it is.
It was.
As I try to point out weak spots where I find them. I think people who follow me can tell a full-throated recommendation from I really like this for this reason, and you might too. And some restaurants appeal for different reasons. Some of the food is extraordinary. Others, the setting is just exactly what you want. Others are, reinvigorating a certain part of town. I mean, all these things are worthwhile, worth knowing about, and worth uplifting. But there is, there can be this overwhelming wave of negativity out there, and I don't think that what I'm asking people to give me their attention for is not that. I want them to know what's good, what's worth their time to go to, what's worth their money to go to also. And
highlight the certain things that you make it so great. Like you're saying, like my readers know who I am. So I want to share it in the eyes of like what I think they would like and why the reasons they would go there and make sure you get this dish or this cocktail.
Yes, exactly.
Because of these reasons, right?
That's all it is. It's not, did McNulty think the soup was hot enough? This is just not a very compelling, interesting angle to me. But I try to understand what our audience are, mostly New Orleans audience, but also people who travel or who live far away but have an interest in New Orleans and come here and want to know what the New Orleans situation is. I try to gauge my coverage to the things that I think they will like and that they will respond to. It doesn't have to be necessarily every restaurant that I cover is my favorite, but I think it has something to say to my audience. Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's so many different things about it. Like you said, like, oh, this is revitalizing this neighborhood. We talked about the pop-ups, but was there ever, like, what's an underrated restaurant you think everyone needs to go to that people aren't talking about enough? Is there one that comes to your head?
Yeah, Brightson's restaurant. It's been around for 40 years now, and it's one of those New Orleans stories where a place can be around for 40 years. And you think everyone knows about it, and I'm shocked.
And I have not been there.
It's
on my list because everyone keeps saying how good it is.
Well, listen, this is a city of over 1,000 restaurants. Nobody actually knows the number, right? It's really hard to gauge what it is. But a lot of restaurants in a fairly small city with a pretty small population. So yeah, it's easy to miss some of these. This is why in my coverage, it's worth going back to revisiting these places and resurfacing them again for people. And like Brightson's is just a great example of pure New Orleans flavor. I mean, if there's a skeptic out there who thinks, I don't know about this, drum amandine, I'm not sure about gumbo, what is a big deal about barbecue shrimp anyway? You take them there, their eyes light up. I've seen this happen numerous times. But it's a place with Chef Frank Brightson and his wife Marna opened it 40 years ago. It is the opposite of hip and happening. It's an old granny's cottage in Riverbend. There is no bar. They'll serve you a drink, but there's no bar to sit at and just have your little appetizer and a cocktail to check it out. I mean, you're going and you're sitting in what was formerly and looks exactly like today a living room or a dining room in this Creole cottage. But the food is so legit. The hospitality is so legit. It's very old-fashioned in many ways, but enduring and timeless in others. And that's one that is it's stellar in my book. And it's the kind of place I love turning people on to. This has been here for 4 decades and I'm just going for the first time. That's really exciting.
That is really exciting. And when someone gets like a new chef, like Restaurant Revolution just recently got a new chef. And that was my first time going, was with this new chef. And he added this one dish to the menu that I'm like, everyone that comes to New Orleans now needs to get this dish. And it's like a deconstructed boil. I don't know if you've had it yet.
Yeah.
It's friggin' phenomenal. And so it's like interesting, right?
Oh, sure.
Something could be around forever, but like they start doing new dishes or get a new chef or change up something to it.
That's why you have to keep going back.
You got to keep going back.
A new chef can make a difference. Sometimes a chef can come back from a trip and come back and the menu is rewritten.
Absolutely. Who do you think is the most influential chef in New Orleans? It's kind of a hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say Emeril Lagasse. I mean, if we're going back, he broke the template for chefs. He introduced a new era of what being a chef was. He made being a chef really cool to a lot of people because of his media, because of the TV shows he did at the time, then his cookbooks. He inspired a lot of people. And I just had a talk with him at Tulane Book Festival recently. We were talking about the old days, his idea of new New Orleans cuisine, that it didn't have to be just the same recipes at every restaurant that were being often perfected and wonderful, but you could change it up. And that was a revolutionary idea at the time that put him on the map, even before he became celebrity famous. And I mean, I think that is a legacy and influence that still reverberates.
Yeah.
I mentioned Frank Brightson from Brightson's restaurant. He's influential in a much smaller way because he devoted a lot of time to mentoring people who've gone on and opened other restaurants. And he actually works hands-on with students who are coming up. I mean, that's the kind of hands-on Creole kitchen knowledge that you kind of have to get from someone of a previous generation to carry forward.
Yeah. You've read about many restaurants that are now closed. What separates the ones that survive from the ones that close?
Oh, so many factors. I mean, we mentioned before that, a lot of restaurants are family businesses. I mean, think about even some of the biggest restaurant names in New Orleans. These are run by family companies. We think of like just a mom and pop bookstore down the street or something, but no, these are mom and pop operations. Arno's restaurant, I mentioned it earlier. This is a gigantic restaurant. I can seat like 1,200 people across all of its different banquet rooms. It's run by a brother and a sister who turned to their mom because the mom and late father ran it before them. The Kasparian family, Antoine's restaurant. It's a family-run business that goes back more than a century and a half. There's so these restaurants they're delicate things because they're not backed by big corporations. They don't have very often huge investors. And
if they don't own the building, that's also tough.
Right. So that's a very good point. Yeah. Some of the factors that can determine success are, were you able to own the building or are you leasing it? That can change the entire equation. And by the way, if the restaurant does have to close, if you think, okay, this isn't working, you have options. It's heartbreaking to me when I see a restaurant put in so much effort and money into a concept and it doesn't last very long and everything gets hauled out and then it just turns over to something else and that's gone. It's just all gone. But money is very important in the business. And I see restaurants open with perhaps not enough backing, not enough capital to weather the first few months, years. I mean, it can take a long time for a restaurant to really start coming around and making money for the people who own it.
Absolutely.
So that's big. You have to be able to, and in New Orleans, you must be able to weather the summer. Bad pun intended. The summer here is brutal.
And you have to think of it as I'm not making money for 2 months. Yes. Can I withstand that?
Yes. I mean, it's the same thing for servers as it is for the restaurant operators. Yep. I mean, the smart ones, they'll load up, make hay when the sun is shining, and then they pay that back out in the summer months. And it's different for different places. I mean, I hear people who've, they've unlocked it, they've decoded it, and they do okay in the summertime. Some of them do quite well in the summertime.
Right.
But that is a big seasonal challenge that every restaurant has to consider here. And if they don't, it can catch up with them very fast.
Yeah. Talk about Michelin. So Michelin for the first time comes to the American South.
Yeah.
What do you think about Michelin, and how do you think they did with our city?
Well, it was a long time coming. And it's a big deal for New Orleans because, first of all, the new Michelin Guide covers this entire region, this entire 6-state region, which is vast.
It's huge.
And it's so different when you think about New Orleans to the Gulf Coast up to
Nashville,
North Carolina. Right. So it's such a different spread of territory. But it's long overdue and deserved recognition for the restaurants that are aspiring to Michelin star status. And it's really helpful for the city in a way that it draws people who do, typically well-heeled people who do travel specifically to go to these restaurants. And then when they're not at the restaurants, they're staying in hotels, they're going shopping, they're doing other things around the city, they're going to non-Michelin star restaurants. So for that, it was an important feather in the cap of New Orleans for its reputation as not just a great food city, but a food city on par of this global level, like that we've always known. Like I said earlier, like this is the cuisine of Catalonia. This is the cuisine of Tuscany. It's the cuisine of New Orleans. It belongs on that with the same kind of consideration and reputation.
And bring more people from around the world to actually want to come here and try certain places because they look at Michelin as a big deal.
Sure. And so, what do they get right? What do they get wrong? I actually broke this down in a column shortly after it came out. It's their first year, and generously, I would say they're still learning the scene. They announced that Michelin was coming, and then I think within something like 6 or 7 months, they're announcing their first class of star winners and restaurants that are being recognized in their other tiers. And so the 3 New Orleans restaurants got stars. Emeril's at 2 stars. Saint Germain at 1 star, and then Zazu at 1 star, and all of them deserving. I admit Zazu is very surprising to me because I love that restaurant. It's a fantastic upscale expression of Chef Zuzamanic's style and taste, and it's wonderful. And it doesn't fit the template of what Michelin often recognizes. And so Michelin is a mystery. There's a mystique there. Emeril's restaurant, Saint Germain, you can track that style of restaurant in other cities. There's no restaurants just like them, but there's a style. There's a style approach to service. There's the tasting menu.
Yeah.
There's all the details that Michelin evidently looks for, because you can see it in what makes a Michelin restaurant.
Right. It's almost like with Chef Sue, they were really looking at just the way the food was presented and the flavors, because she's not this tasting menu with certain type of style of service. It's just a cool neighborhood joint.
Yeah.
That's why it's so fascinating.
Yeah. And
So you think though there were some things they'd missed the mark?
Yeah,
for sure.
But it's their mark, first of all. So,
That's
it's
right.
their brand. I mean,
do you look at Michelin though? Like, are you big on that? Like, if it's Michelin, it's.
If I'm traveling to another city, I want to see what's getting that level of recognition. I mean, Michelin is very diligent. They're going out there and they're doing. You can see exactly what they're looking for in their star rating system, and they put it all out there on the table. There are the levels of recommended or bib gourmand. That's a little harder to decode. I'm not quite sure what you're telling me.
I'm not understanding either, because it's supposed to be value, but some places are just really expensive.
Highly relative expression of value.
Yeah,
right?
It's like, huh?
And so, you have recommended restaurants that are very high end, and then others that are quite casual that are grouped in the same category as, we recommend them. So I'm not quite sure what that's telling me. I don't envy it either. Every year I put together my own list of top restaurants, and I try to make it a little more user-friendly for locals by putting them in categories. Okay, these are my top picks for this category, because I'm not putting Restaurant August up next to Parkway Bakery, right? These are very, very different restaurants for different reasons. And you might go on the same trip or the same day, but you're going for different reasons, for a different experience. And so, when I break down my top restaurant picks, I try to give a little more of a key for people to understand why I'm picking them. Michelin is a little more mysterious. But yes, I think as they get to know the market better, as they have a chance, frankly, to go to more places, and kind of assess places next to each other of what chefs are doing, how the restaurants kind of fit into the overall puzzle of experiences in New Orleans, I think you'll see it expand. And it happens in other cities. I've watched it in other expansion markets for Michelin. The first year, there's a handful of places with stars. The next year, there's a few more. It starts to mature a little bit, and it starts to make a little more sense. And I think you'll see that in year 2.
Do you think there's are there restaurants that come to mind that you think deserved a star at least here that didn't get it?
I was surprised at the omission of Commander's Palace, of Mamou, fantastic new place in the edge of the French Quarter, and of Restaurant August. Those would be sort of my top. Maybe I think Brennan's restaurant on Royal Street. Now, see, you can get carried away. All these restaurants are great. They're fantastic. They're deserving.
I was shocked that August was not.
But I mean, specifically to the standards that Michelin outlines and says this is what we're looking for. Those are ones that I think they would certainly hit the mark if I was going in looking for the criteria that they want. Those are restaurants that I think would hit those marks compared to other restaurants that have gotten similar recognition in other cities. So, but again, I've said in another column, New Orleans looks at restaurants a bit differently than Michelin does. I really do think that. I mean, for New Orleans people, New Orleanians, the food has to be good, but it has to be more than that. There has to be this experience. There has to be this feeling of hospitality. There has to be this feeling of relevance in the city and in the community. Yeah. And I mean,
the history, the culture, the
right.
vibe,
does that get you a Michelin star? Obviously not in this category, but in the way that New Orleans people regard their restaurants and hold them up. I mean, you couldn't ask for more of those qualities from Commander's Palace, which didn't get even a Michelin mention. So
so you think there'll be more stars in the future with different restaurants?
Yeah, I do.
As they start expanding.
Right. I don't think there's going to be suddenly a whole new constellation of them, but I think my short prediction this far out would be probably 2 more restaurants, maybe getting a 1 star.
Yeah.
And then the restaurants that have gotten stars, they're angling possibly for more. So,
absolutely.
Could we have a 3-star restaurant in New Orleans, perhaps?
Yeah. Okay, so let's do rapid fire.
Okay.
All right. What's your go-to Vietnamese spot?
Oh, it's Pho de Bay. It's the first one I fell in love with. It's the first bowl of pho I ever had. And, I love Ton Dinh. I love Lily's. I love going out to Dong Phong, making an excursion out there. There's so many more. But you never forget your first love. And it was Pho de Bay. And if when I need pho therapy,
that's your spot.
Yeah, I'm there. Okay. I'm there for lunch.
Po' boy.
Parkway Bakery. It's been
what do you get?
Shrimp po' boy every time.
Okay.
Or the roast beef. Let's switch it up. Or the best half and half.
Italian.
Mosca's, which is a little bit of a cheat because it's in its own category.
It is its own category.
But when I think Italian food, I think Mama's gravy. I think all that garlic. I'm heading over the river.
Snowball.
Hanson's. It's a Snow Whiz. It's a thing. It's the champ.
Ice cream.
Angelo Brocato's. Century-plus-year-old gelato parlor in Mid-City. You are in Sicily when you walk through those doors. Excellent.
Dive bar.
Ooh, I don't know if I can call Pal's Lounge a dive bar, but
I would call it that.
Yeah, okay. It's not
Pal's?
fancy. Not fancy. It's kind of
it's pretty divey.
The sneaky, early pioneer craft cocktail dive bar. Yeah, it's Pal's.
Okay. Fine dining.
Ooh, well, Emerald's. I mean, if you're talking about the finest of fine dining, what's money not an issue for this one, maybe. Gosh, Emerald's. I mean, it is the distillation of what New Orleans fine dining is at that level, and it's the finest.
Okay, gumbo.
Ooh.
What about regular gumbo? And then we'll do seafood.
Okay,
can we do that?
Yeah, I just had one recently that
sausage.
Was did it displace my favorite? I'm not going to take the cop and say, home cooking, because that would kind of be true, but home
cooking would be it.
Last gumbo on the way out of town, I'm probably going to Little Dizzy's.
Okay, Lil
Yeah,
Dizzy's.
Probably going to Little Dizzy's.
For the seafood.
Yeah. Oh, that's a Creole gumbo. So that's everything under the sun.
Everything under the sun.
Yeah, seafood
so
gumbo.
You're getting Lil Dizzy's.
You gotta try the one at Pesh for seafood gumbo. It's something that they put in there. It's you're down the bayou. I mean, it's an upscale place, but you were going down the bayou when you have that seafood gumbo there.
Pizza.
Z's. Yeah, that
Z's
crust, it just nails it. Just crispy and. I mean, we said earlier, there's a lot of good pizza in New Orleans now, which was not the case before.
Yeah.
But Z's, it hits it every time for me.
All right. Cocktail lounge. Or just cocktail bar.
Cure. Yeah.
Cure.
Yeah. They set a whole new standard with that. And it's still, they're still the beacon.
All right. That was good. Good recommendations. Okay. What do you hope happens in the New Orleans food scene that you haven't seen yet?
Well, I hope it continues to embrace what it is, and that we see more places coming along that are grounded in New Orleans flavor and the New Orleans experience, and that give people more of a taste of that. You know, more Willie Mays, more places like Hi Hat Cafe, more places. Like Chapter 4, Dick Chase's new restaurant, places that just exude that New Orleans feeling, but for the next generation coming in.
Yeah, I love that. I agree with that. Do you plan on staying in New Orleans forever? Or for like...
Yeah. I mean, this is home, and you go somewhere else, it's like trying to breathe through gills. I mean, the nice places to visit, but it's the lifestyle, the culture, the people, I'm anchored.
I know. I feel the same way. Ian, this was such an honor to sit with you and talk with you.
Great fun.
This is such a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on Say More.
Thanks for the invitation.
All right. See ya.